Hello and welcome to an instant reaction from, I don't know, maybe we call it an instant classic. USC takes down number one UCLA, hands the Bruins their first loss. We're talking women's basketball here because JuJu Watkins just went off, Connor. What are your first thoughts seeing USC go 24 and 8 in the fourth quarter, just dominate the fourth quarter, a game that struggled for two quarters after dominating the first quarter? It was kind of each quarter had its own story, own tale to tell, and the fourth quarter was all USC, and they win 71 to 60 to move into first place in the Big Ten while handing UCLA their first loss and also upping their resume for potential a number one seed a little bit later in the NCAA tournament too.
Have to start with Juju, of course. I mean, you mentioned it, the 38 points, but she was fantastic defensively too. 8 blocks. She had 11 rebounds, 5 assists on offense. Only the 3 turnovers. USC only had 9 turnovers in the game, and that was a big problem for them coming into the game. They forced UCLA into 20, but yeah, Juju is the main story. In the second and third quarter, shotgun, Juju was the only woman of Troy player to make a field goal. The rest of her teammates were 0 of 25 and they won by 11. So a weird game, but this is one when we talk about the legend of JuJu Watkins. We were waiting. When is her huge game going to happen this year? Last year it was the Stanford game. Now it's the UCLA game. And defensively, she was so remarkable too. I'm sure she was good defensively last year against Stanford, but we'll always remember the 8 blocks. Like that was just different tonight, and she did it on both ends. What a game, what a performance. And I don't have to tell you, but if USC didn't have JuJu Watkins tonight, they get blown out, that's for sure.
Definitely. They went a stretch. They started the game 12 of 25. They're up by 13. Now, this is a UCLA team that has won every game except for one by double digits. So I looked it up. They get ahead. I'm like, okay, 10 points. They were up at one point. I'm like, they can't have had many 10-point deficits this season. They had not had one yet. They were down by 14. They beat a team by more points than it had been trailing at any point in the season, which tells you, which is incredible. But also the fact they were down by 7 in the second half, like just the back and forth of this game. The most UCLA had trailed this season was 7 against Ohio State. I think last week or 2 weeks ago. So to be able to put it on UCLA was impressive. But they start out 12 of 25, and you're like, whoa, everything's kind of going their way. You're texting me like, man, my takes from the podcast aren't great. But then they go on a stretch, the next 25 shots, they make three of 25 as a team. And as you mentioned, no one other than JuJu Watkins made a basket and made a field goal in the second or third quarter. Talia von Oelhoffen, the 12th shot to go in, or one of the somewhere in there was she made a buzzer beater at the end of the first quarter, and like, whoa, everything's going USC's way, and they move it from a 3 to a 2, but everything's going USC's way, and then no one can make a shot except for Juju, and she carries the team. Now she got cold at one point, but then to finish the game, and it wasn't just the scoring, as you mentioned, it was the defense, the blocks. She set a career high with 8 blocks, 5 of them in the fourth quarter. When the game was on the line, she just took her game to a whole nother level. And, we had this conversation on the podcast, and people have been asking about it on the message boards. Is she disinterested? Is she going through something? Is she fatigued? She looked like a completely different player tonight, and on both ends of the court. She didn't see the frustration that she had shown in previous games, and maybe that was just because the first couple shots fell, and she was able to build on it and kept going.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said right there. In a battle of player of the year candidates, and I mean, we were talking, and I brought it up, so that's on me. Like, is Juju going to be a first team All American? We were talking about that on our podcast because of her recent struggles. And then in a battle of premier players in women's college basketball, Lauren Betts got it going for a little bit, but she ends 5 of 13, 18 points, 13 rebounds. She was really good and she was great at drawing fouls, but 5 of 13, that's not tremendous. And then she had the 4 turnovers. Like Juju in this battle just totally outclassed her with the 38 points, 12 of 26. So yeah, another game for Juju where we'll just be talking about that and remembering this for a long, long time. It's too bad that this was on Peacock, Shotgun. I know both of us have Peacock, but America should have seen this game. And if you didn't have Peacock, you missed a hell of a game, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, this would have been great if it would have been one of those Fox build-up games, where you had an NFL game before, like you did with the UConn game or some of the other ones they've had. Wasn't the case, but the people that were in the building, I'm jealous of them because that atmosphere looked rocking. You had Kevin Hart there, you had Issa there. I'm forgetting her last name. You had a couple other actresses there. You had Jaden Daniels, the offensive player, rookie of the year for NFL. Like you just had a bunch of people there, and people wanted to be there, people wanted to be seen, and this was an amazing effort by USC. Real quick, we'll break this down in full next week on the Triple Double podcast. Make sure you guys check that out. But Juju, she finished with 38 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. She fell 2 points shy. I had a tweet ready. She was about to set a new record, another record. She was going to take over for the most 40-point games in USC history. She's tied right now with Cheryl Miller, who was in the building, and Sherry Nelson. Instead, she gets her sixth game of 35 plus points. We'll talk about who stood up, who stood out. Otherwise, I thought with Lauren Betts, you mentioned her. She didn't score in the last 15 minutes. USC changed their defenses, and I thought they did a really good job, and that included Juju coming in helping out as well. But let's look at the big picture on this one and this quick instant reaction. The big picture, what does this win mean for USC? As I said, they do move into first place. They are tied, I think, technically with UCLA, but obviously they have the tiebreaker right now. They will see UCLA again on March 1st down the road, so it could be another epic game there. But as of right now, USC moves into first place in the Big Ten standings.
That's huge. It gives them the inside track for a number one seed in the NCAA tournament if they can go on to win the conference. But of course, a lot of work to be done there. I go back to what I've said all year with this team shotgun, where it might not be pretty on offense, and tonight it certainly wasn't outside of Juju. But if they play defense like they played tonight, they're going to be in every game. They beat the number one team in the country, held them to the fewest points that UCLA scored all year, 35% from the field. And then in the fourth quarter, like they played clutch defense. They held UCLA to only 8 points, and it was really only six because the last two came in garbage time. So a tremendous defensive effort. And we know Juju, like, 38 points is ridiculous. You can't rely on her to play the way she did every night, but she certainly has the potential to do so. What I'm trying to say is if USC defends at the level that they defended at against UCLA in the NCAA tournament, in more of these big time games going forward, they're going to have a chance to win them. And then when you have a player like JuJu Watkins on your team, a transcendent talent, who, would you bet against anyone? Like, would you bet against her with the ball in her hands at the end if USC plays good defense and the game's tied? Like, she'll give you a chance to win every time if you play defense at the highest level. So I think I'm back in on them being a national title team all of a sudden. I know it's a game at the Galen Center and they'll have to win on neutral courts, some tough games going forward. But like, how can you not think they're back in the national title discussion after this?
And the fact that USC will have some NCAA tournament games at home, I think that's going to be huge. It was great to see the crowd the way it was in that one. You mentioned the defense. 12.5%. They were 2 of 16 in the fourth quarter. UCLA was. They were only 27.6. So the defense got better as the game progressed in the second half. And then not only just the field goal percentage, but they forced 20 turnovers. And you mentioned it earlier, hadn't noticed it, but the 9 turnovers USC had, USC turned 20 turnovers from UCLA into 21 points. And that was a huge part of it. And also the rebounding. So they lost the rebounding battle, but second chance points, they had a 14-3 advantage, even though having fewer offensive rebounds. So, and I thought that sequence, Lindsey Gottlieb mentioned it on the post game interview, it really just defined them. They got 3 or 4 offensive rebounds. People are diving on the floor, and then it ends up with Kiki Irefin getting a bucket or getting fouled and go to the free throw line. And she stepped up. You mentioned Juju carried this team throughout. It was even more so than just like, hey, she had a really good performance. Kennedy Smith, 1 of 8. Rhea Marshall, 0 of 2. Kiki Irefin was 1 of 11 going into the fourth quarter, or at one point in the fourth quarter. So, and Talia Von Ohoff, 2 of 5. So the starters were not really providing much there. Nobody off the bench had more than 1 field goal. So it was definitely all her. And the fact she did on the defensive end was super impressive too. An epic performance by her. And we're waiting for it to come out, struggle a little bit. When's that breakout performance going to be? Similar to the Stanford game last year. I think she's got another one. This one goes right there in the annals alongside that Stanford win last year, I think.
Absolutely. She's the story, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She was tremendous tonight. The last thing I'll say on this game, Shotgun, I think you got to feel pretty good about Lindsey Gottlieb and the USC coaching staff. Not that I didn't feel good about them before, but their adjustments in this game, like having Juju double Lauren Betts in the post at the very end and making her life really hard, playing Clarice Akinwafo as much as USC did. I thought USC made great adjustments. Lindsey Gottlieb, that staff as the game went on, and UCLA really didn't adjust the way I thought. And early, what was UCLA's game plan early on? JuJu was going like the defenders, excuse me, were slipping under screens, and JuJu was hitting wide open threes. I didn't really get the game plan defending her at all, and USC made him play or made him pay. I thought USC really won the coaching matchup tonight too.
You mentioned Clarice Akinwafo finishes the game plus 16 in 21 minutes. Tremendous performance for someone who didn't score a point in the game. And she only had 3 rebounds, so it wasn't like she filled the stats up, but her defense on Lauren Betts was really huge in this one. That's going to wrap it up, though, for this instant reaction. We will have more on the site. We got a rapid recap up. We'll have a little bit more. We'll probably have some social media reaction and whatnot a little bit later as well. So keep it locked to uscfootball.com for more on USC's big win over previously undefeated UCLA #1 Bruins 71-60.